and welcome to episode 23 of Sarastro's Marvel Crisis Protocol painting series. In this video, I'll be painting Rogue from Atomic Mass Games' Marvel Crisis Protocol. As usual, I've chosen to prime the model in black, followed with some grey and white zenithal highlights applied from above. I also chose to leave the chunk of metal that attaches to her left hand off for the moment. I'll then be providing clean, flat base colours and doing a little wet blending for the hair to achieve some initial tonal variation. And as you'd expect, I'll be spending the most time building up the highlights, aiming for a bright, shiny look for the outfit, and I'll be painting the explosion using the techniques established back in the Deadpool episode. And I'm just attaching the metal ball with white tack to keep my options open. Let's begin. I'm going to begin by painting the eyes using Nacar, followed with some black for the pupils. I like to paint the eyes first, whilst it's quite okay to make a mess of the surrounding area. I'm now painting the area around the eyes in black. And I'm using my chosen skin tone for the rest of the face, which is Scalecolor's Pink Flesh, which I'm darkening with some burnt sienna and a little black. This is just a nice easy way of achieving some black lining for the eyes. I also painted the arms with this, but later realised they ought to be green, so you can leave them for now. For the yellow parts of the outfit, I'm using Sahara Yellow, darkened with a little orange leather. A second layer may be needed for a solid finish. For the green areas, I'm using black forest green, once again applied in a couple of layers. Next I'm painting the jacket using a roughly equal mix of brown leather and petroleum grey. For the hair, I'm using mainly red leather, but I've chosen to wet blend in some Mars orange for the highlights, and some black for the shadows. And for the white hair at the front, I'm using a mix of Graphite and Nacar. And here I'm just using the Graphite to place some initial shadows. I'm now adding a little black lining to help with the definition. And here I'm using Abyssal Blue for the X-Men symbols on the outfit. I'm now just finishing the base colours off with a little refining and tidying up. We're now ready to add the highlights. I'm starting with the skin, where I'll first be highlighting up to a roughly equal mix of Scalecolor's pink and golden flesh tones. For the brighter highlights, I'll be mixing in varying amounts of vanilla white, and I'll have some primary red on standby. I'm now mixing the lip colour using the skin tone along with some red and some burnt sienna. Next I'm adding increasing amounts of vanilla white to the skin tone to begin building up the brighter highlights. Here I'm glazing some more reddish tones into the shadows of the cheeks. Using thinned layers like this helps to achieve a softer look. I'm also placing some eyebrows using the reddish hair tone, making corrections as I go. And I'm adding vanilla white to the lip colour to place quite a strong off-centre highlight to the lower lip. These are my last few highlights. Next I'm going to use some primary red to colour the inset parts of the X-Men symbols. It's probably easiest to apply the paint thinned to the point where it simply flows into the shallow recesses. You might just need to apply a couple of layers to achieve enough saturation. I'm now highlighting the raised parts of the symbols by adding increasing amounts of white sands to the Abyssal Blue base tone. I've also just noticed the small symbol on the left arm. Next I'm going to highlight the areas of yellow using Sahara Yellow, and then with the addition of Sol and Tenere Yellow for the brighter highlights. This is now pure Tenere Yellow. To achieve an even shinier look, I'm now using some white sands. Here I'm seeing how it looks when applied neat. And then glazed over with some of the Sol Yellow. And here I'm simply mixing it into the highlight tone. Next I'm going to highlight the jacket by adding increasing amounts of Arabic shadow to the base tone, followed with a little Tenere Yellow for the brightest highlights. Here I'm adding the Tenere Yellow for my last few highlights. I'm now highlighting the hair, initially using the same red leather and Mars orange gradient we used earlier. And I'm now adding some Tenere Yellow for the brighter highlights. You can see I'm freely adding some additional texture as I go. I'm now using some Nacar to highlight the hair at the front. Which I'm now lightening with some white sands. I'm also adding a few darker strokes to break things up a bit. Moving on to the green parts of the outfit, I'm going to add increasing amounts of Irati Green to the base tone, followed once again with some Tenere Yellow for the more extreme highlights. I decided to play around with some quite sharply defined reflective highlights here. I'm also now painting the trailing ends of the headband. I ended up creating a mixture of diffuse gradations alongside some quite sharp changes in contrast. I'm now applying some small specular highlights using Tenere Yellow, which I'll be glazing over in a moment. And here I'm brushing over some thinned Irati Green. We can once again also mix the Tenere Yellow into the Irati Green to brighten the highlights. I just enjoy playing around with different approaches. Here I've chosen to mix some black into the black forest green to deepen some of the darker areas, increasing the contrast. I'm now adding my last few specular glints. For the explosion, I'll be using the same approach as detailed in the Deadpool episode, and which I also used for MODOK. This just involves providing a pure white undercoat, followed with some bright fiery tones. I initially used the Vallejo fluorescent colours for this, but ended up toning things down a bit with the Scalecolor Sol Yellow and Mars Orange. We can then freely add some bluish grey tones on top for the smoke. Going pretty dark with this and adding in the blue is a great way to maximise the contrast. I'm now just further darkening the tips of the explosion using Mars Orange. And we can go darker still, using whatever dark brown tones you like. I'm now adding some quick highlights to the debris using the bluish grayscale from the palette. Notice we already have some pretty effective object source lighting on the undersides. And here I'm painting the base using the same grey tones used for the smoke, so mostly graphite mixed with varying amounts of black, white and some Caspian blue. You can see I'm freely adding a bit of texture and some scratches. I'm also glazing a little orange onto some of these upturned panels. I'm now adding a few additional highlights to the suit. And I'm adding a little object source lighting with some thinned fluorescent red. I'm also painting the piece of optional scrap metal using the same bluish greys used elsewhere. And I'm just attaching this with some white tack. I've now decided to add some small pieces of debris to the explosion using some urban rubble. This can be glued on with PVA, but for the very tips of the explosion I'm using superglue. You could equally use small pieces of cork for this. I'm now just bringing back some more of the fiery tones in the recesses, once again by laying down some white followed with some yellow and orange. Finally, I'm painting the arms green. And this completes Rogue. Thank you for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the episode. As usual, you can find a full product list in the video description, along with links to all of the places I can be found on social media, as well as the various music platforms. My sincerest thanks go to my amazing patrons for funding this series. If you're interested in becoming a patron, you can find out more by hitting the Patreon link. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures for Marvel Crisis Protocol. Happy painting!